Welcome to the latest episode of Mystery Unsolved. A little bit of a hiatus, not that anyone noticed, not that anyone cares. This this episode tonight is a long time coming. It is an episode that many, and I do mean many people, have done. It has been beaten to death, beaten like a dead horse. And probably one of the reasons I didn't do it. But upon further research and just the absolute ridiculousness of it, I felt that however many seasons of Mysteries Unsolved that I'm into, 7 or 8, I'm not even keeping track at this point anymore. I figured if I'm going to do a series on mysteries, this has to be on there. Although it ain't really much of a mystery to me. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mystery Unsolved, the John Benet Ramsay case. Now, you'd have to be living under a rock for the last 25 years to not have at least have heard of the name John Benet. As usual, I am going to be, for this particular season, most of my cases come from an Unsolved Murders book. So, yeah, without further ado, just a reminder, if I'm looking ahead or I'm looking over, that is because I am currently streaming on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And it's really hard to just, but I'll look around, do my best. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Mystery Unsolved, the John Benet Ramsay case. A missing beauty queen, a bizarre ransom note, and a body in the basement. The tragic death of John Benet Ramsay was a multifaceted enigma that would defy explanation. So one thing I would like to normally I would say viewer discretion advised for the last few cases. I don't have to do that for this case. The only thing I will advise you of is that I might actually go off the freaking rails and stop reading at certain points because my mind is just so caught up with the insanity of some of the explanations for this. 6-year-old beauty queen John Benet Ramsay was destined for stardom. John and Pat Ramsay, her parents, were convinced of it. A former Miss West Virginia herself, Patsy Ramsay was determined that her pretty daughter should follow in her glamorous footsteps. I feel like that's a fairly innocent sentence, but I feel like behind that sentence is a more darker intent. In a cruel twist of fate, Jean Benet would be buried in the same sparkless dress that she competed in. I did not know that. The tragic details of her death and mysterious circumstances surrounding it have made it one of the U.S.'s most notorious unsolved murder cases. Unsolved murder, huh? That's what we're calling this. 25 plus years later, it's an unsolved murder. I don't think it is. The rails are already starting to turn. Remember, I've already read this part, and I already know about the case. But that doesn't mean anything, because I'm still going to read this, and I'm just going to go apeshit. I hope there's another person on the planet that knows about this case, and every time they come across it, their brain just boils at the insanity. All right, let's get into it here. From a very young age, John Benet was entered into beauty pageants, dressed in flashy outfits, embellished with sequins and other eye-catching decoration. Yeah, we already know this part. The world remembers Jean Benet with bleached blonde hair and a face full of makeup, but there was much more to this bright little girl. She excelled in mathematics and was fascinated by nature. She was 6, wasn't she? Like, how fascinating, like, how much can a 6-year-old excel in mathematics? Come on. She enjoyed chatting with the Ramsay's gardener, Brian Scott, while he worked. I remember how intelligent she was. That's why I never talked to her as if she was just a little kid, he recalled. The Ramsay family's 6-year-old Jean Benet and her 9-year-old brother, Burke, and John and Patsy lived at 755 15th Street, Boulder, Colorado. I like how this case has become so widely known that they give you a street address. Like, if that house still exists, the people that live there now are like, the hell are these people doing on the street? Oh, they're probably here for the Jean Benet thing. Their home was an impressive brick house in the Tudor Revival style on a tree-lined avenue. In December 1994, 2,000 people visited the Ramsays' home for a guided tour organized by the Boulder Historical Society. Oh, okay, so the house is already famous, I guess. Yes. Yeah. John Ramsay was president of Access Graphics, a successful computer company, while Patsy was a former pageant star turned housewife. So they're pretty much banking off of John Ramsay's money. That is worth noting in spades. John Ramsay had 3 grown-up children from a previous marriage. I don't think I knew that prior to reading this. Elizabeth, John Andrew, and Melinda. In 1992, Elizabeth had died in a car crash, age 22. To the outside world, the Ramsay family seemed to epitomize the American dream. A beautiful family, an exquisite house, and a vacation home in the picturesque Charlevoix, Michigan, and a white picket fence. I included that last part. As Christmas 1996 approached, the Ramsays sent out their usual greeting card detailing the things the family had done during the year, along with a festive photograph. This was the last card they would send as a family of 4. So imagine being like, this was like a thing that people did. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure people still do it. They send out family Christmas cards, to your loved ones. But like the way that I read that, it just sounded so like old timey. You know what I mean? Like just so blah. On Christmas evening, the Ramsays were that. On Christmas evening, the Ramsays went to a party given by their old friends Fleet and Priscilla White. The family left around 10 p.m. since they were traveling to their vacation home in Charlevoix the next morning and wanted to take an early start. According to John and Patsy, the whole family went straight to bed. Packing for the trip could wait till in the morning. At around 5:45 a.m., Patsy Ramsay awoke and discovered a 3-page handwritten note on the spiral staircase that led from the master bedroom to the kitchen. So if you know anything about this case, you know that one thing that is absolutely one of the biggest question marks of it is the ransom note, which is here in detail in its entirety. Get off my screen, thank you. So yeah, the ransom note. I will read the ransom note. After I'm done reading it, I will try not to go down the rabbit hole and into the insanity that is the ransom note. Mr. Ramsay, listen carefully. We are a group of individuals that represent a small foreign faction. We do respect your business, but not the country that it serves. At this time, we have your daughter in our possession. She is safe and unharmed, and if you want her to see 1997, you must follow our instructions to the letter. You will withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be in $100 bills, and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure you bring an adequate size attached to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you to be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you to arrange an earlier delivery of the money and hence a early pickup for your daughter. delivery is scratched off the note. Any deviation of my instructions will result in immediate execution of your daughter. You will also be denied her remains for proper burial. The two gentlemen watching over your daughter do not particularly like you, so I advise you not to provoke them. Speaking to anyone about your situation, such as police, FBI, etc., will result in your daughter being beheaded. If we catch you talking to any stray dog, she dies. If you alert bank authorities, she dies. If the money is in any way marked or tampered with, she dies. You will be scanned for electronic devices, and if any are found, she dies. You can try to deceive us, but we warn you that we are familiar with the law enforcement countermeasures and tactics. You stand a 99% chance of killing your daughter if you try to outsmart us. Follow our instructions, and you stand a 100% chance of getting her back. You and your family are under constant scrutiny, as well as the authorities. Don't try to grow a brain, John. You are not the only fat cat around, and don't think that killing will be difficult. Don't underestimate us, John. Use the good Southern common sense of yours. It's up to you now, John. Victory. Signed, SBTC. There are several things wrong with this letter. What I'm now going to do is I'm going to read everything that it says, and then I'll also add my own take on it. I'm sorry I keep looking. I think I hear like a garbage truck or an industrial truck of some sort outside. It's throwing me. After reading the note, Patsy rushed upstairs to find that Jean Benet was not in her bedroom. This is interesting to me because obviously, again, foreshadowing, Patsy Ramsay becomes a suspect. So the fact that what I'm about to read to you, the fact that the first thing that she does is run upstairs is a little interesting. She wasn't in the bathroom. She was not in the bedroom. She was gone. Disregarding the threatening conditions laid down in the note, Patsy called 911 to report a kidnapping. She then called several friends, including Fleet and Priscilla White, and begged them to come over immediately for moral support. So, here's the thing that I find extremely odd about this, and there are three things. There's a few things I find extremely wrong about this. Number one, the letter is addressed to Mr. Ramsay, which would be Jean Benet's father, John. It says several times in the note, do not contact authorities, police, FBI, nobody. Don't talk to a stray dog, nobody. Do not talk to anybody. And what's the first thing that Patsy Ramsay does? What does she do? She calls 911. Not only that, but she calls her friends. I don't know about you, but if I had a daughter and she went missing and the note said not to contact authorities, not only am I not contacting authorities, I'm not thinking about calling my friends. My daughter's missing. I'm probably going to think, oh my God, I have to do what the letter says. I'm going to go wake up my husband. That should be the first thing that she does. But it's not. It's not even the second thing that she does. Let's be honest. The first thing that she does is check the bedroom. She's not there. Then again, if she did it, she'd already know she wasn't there. So whichever way you want to look at it, the first and second thing that she does is contact 911. Even though it specifically says in the letter not to. Don't contact anybody. And she contacts her friends as well. And not her husband. So, yeah. The first officer on the scene, Rick French, was unable to find any sign of forced entry and noted that the house's security system had not been activated the night before. Contrary to normal protocol, the house was not cordoned off to preserve potential evidence. Police officers, the Ramsays, and their friends roamed freely through its rooms. You know what this has always sounded like to me? If they were a well-known, well-respected family, they likely had the police officers in their pocket. That has never been stated. I'm just throwing it out there. Just because, why the fuck would you just randomly, just freely roam around a fucking crime scene? Oh, well, it's not technically a crime scene, right? Because there's no body, there's no blood, there's no forced entry. That's why they're free to roam, right? Right? That's why they're roaming around. But even though it doesn't sound like, they just found a ransom note. But are they going off of the ransom note? See, this is what's never explained. It's never explained on the internet. It's never explained in this book. It's never explained on documentaries about it. When the police arrive, are they looking at that ransom note? They do later on. But they're like, hey, wait a minute. If you're the police and you get to the Ramsay's residence, isn't the first thing, if you're a smart officer, isn't the first question out of your mouth to Patsy Ramsay, wait, why did you call us? The note specifically says not to. We're kind of happy you did, but at the same time, aren't you worried about or concerned about your daughter's well-being? Several people were reported to have cleaned up in the house just for something to do. I watched The Blob earlier this week, and they get into the doctor's office, and the old woman wants to clean up, and the sheriff stops her because he says, no, this is evidence. You can clean up tomorrow. And she's like, can I just clean around it? This is exactly what this reminds me of. On the kitchen table was a bowl of half-eaten pineapple, as well as a heavy flashlight, though neither were thought important. The bowl was subsequently washed, removing any possible evidence. At the designated time for a kidnapper to call, no phone call came. I want to know what the fuck everybody was doing in the house. This just seems like the most, I don't know how much detail they had. I'm sure there are other reports of this case, but right now in this very book, it makes it sound like the police and the friends came over, not to look for the daughter, but to clean up around the house and just be like, okay, how are we going to play this? Everybody just clean up, and then we can think of a good story. Yeah? Yeah. That's what it sounds like. We'll be getting to the ransom note again eventually, so that's probably where I'm going to lose my shit. At the designated time for the kidnapper to call, no phone call came. Well, that's bizarre, isn't it? There's no mention that Patsy woke John up, mind you. And at the designated time for the kidnapper to call, no phone call came. Well, gee, I wonder why. One, because Patsy Ramsay wrote the damn note. Two, if it wasn't her and the killer's probably somewhere around, already knew that you called the authorities. But I don't think it's two. I just said what I thought it was, and I've always thought that because it's insane to think otherwise. At approximately 2 p.m. But this happened in the morning. So what the fuck were they doing for 4 hours? An officer told John and Fleet to conduct another search of the house. Now, nothing looks like foul play, right? All you have to go on is the ransom note. So why aren't they looking at the ransom note? What are these people doing? What are the police officers doing? Are they just talking amongst themselves? What are they talking about? It's now 2:00. Hey, let's do another search of the house. What would make you draw to the conclusion to check the rest of the house? Unless you were told by the Ramsays themselves to check the rest of the house. John took the lead and they headed towards the basement. Near the back was a small white door leading to the wine cellar, which had been ignored during the initial search, as Officer French had only been looking for exit or entry points to the house. Behind the white door, John and Fleet found Jean Benet's lifeless body. I like how he immediately thinks to go to the basement. Like, that was probably a big-ass house, and the first possible spot that you think to go to is the very spot where your dead daughter's body is. Which had been ignored during the initial search. Again, you had 4 hours to kill. What the fuck were you doing? It's a big house. How do you not check every inch of that house? Unless you decided that you were all sitting amongst yourselves in the living room, conspiring how to go about things. So that when this comes out, you're like, oh, we were doing this and that. We didn't think to check the basement. When in reality, it sounds like, yeah, we just decided not to check the basement because we wanted to kill time. She was lying on her back with her arms raised above her head. A blanket was over her body and her mouth was sealed shut with duct tape. White cord was looped around her wrist and neck. Attached to the cord was a makeshift garrote constructed from a piece of paintbrush. She had also received a blow to the head. There were marks on Jean Benet's face that could have been made by a stun gun or by a piece of electric train track. Part of the basement was devoted to the electric train layout. As soon as John Ramsay saw his daughter, he tore the tape from her mouth, scooped her up in his arms, and rushed upstairs with her to the living room. Unfortunately, this act would prove extremely harmful to the investigation. The body should not have been touched, let alone moved, until a medical examiner had arrived on the scene. Moving the body made it harder to determine cause of death. By this stage, the crime scene had been severely compromised. No shit. And why do you suppose it was compromised? Because the police that were already there were probably paid off. They were probably good friends with the Ramsays. I know this is a really weird conspiracy theory to have, but like, obviously, John Ramsay must have known about it. He must have. The fact that the police just, like, I understand that it was his daughter, and the first thing you think to do is to rush her and pick her up. But is it though? I know reality and entertainment are two completely different things, but if you think back to any TV show, any crime TV show or movie that you've ever watched, how many times does a family member come across a body? What's the first thing they don't pick the body up and run it back up, run it out of there? They don't freaking do that. I mean, Forrest Gump, he picks up Bubba out of the jungle and runs him out of there, and everybody else, but that's different. That's a war. This guy finds his daughter's lifeless body in his basement, and the first thing he thinks of is to get her out of there. And the police just let him. An autopsy concluded that Jean Benet had been asphyxiated. She had also suffered blunt force trauma to the head, leading to a cranicocerebral trauma. Although there was no evidence of conventional rape, sexual assault could not be ruled out. Undigested pineapple was found in her stomach, indicating that she had eaten the fruit within 2 hours of her death. Remember that pineapple that was sitting on the table that they decided to clean the bowl out of? Why would you think to clean the bowl out? However, Patsy said that Jean Benet had not eaten pineapple that day and that she had gone straight to bed after the Whites' party. No one, I imagine there's no person on this planet. Maybe there was. Maybe there's a few people. Maybe there's a few of us. But most people probably don't even consider the pineapple to be a big deal. But this bothers the shit out of me. There was undigested pineapple was found in her stomach, okay? That's what the coroner found. It was there. Undigested. It was there. There was a bowl of pineapple on the kitchen table. And Patsy Ramsay, out of her mouth, was that she had not eaten pineapple that day. That seems like a really sketchy ass thing to say, knowing that the coroner, a medical profession, said, "We found pineapple in your daughter's stomach." There was pineapple on the table, and you're like, "Oh, she didn't eat that day." Again, it's a small thing, but it's like, are you kidding me? In the basement, a small window had been smashed. While this initially seemed suspicious, John said that he had broken it months earlier after accidentally locking himself out. So, the first thing that you would think that they could possibly look for in the 4 hours they needed to kill before 2 o'clock when they found the body was, gee, I wonder if there's any doors that are ajar or windows open. They get to the window down in the basement, and immediately John Ramsay, after his wife said, "Oh, my daughter didn't eat pineapple. Oh, I broke that window months ago when I locked myself out." Like, you conveniently just happen to mention that now? Oh my God, people in the 90s were ridiculously stupid. On the windowsill was a layer of undisturbed dust and dirt, as well as an intact spiderweb, suggesting that it was not an entry or exit point for an intruder. True. Very true. So obviously, what does that tell you? I'm just, I think it's, the reason that upset me so much was because regardless of the fact that that wasn't an entry or exit point, it still should have been like the first thing out of John Ramsay's mouth. That everyone should have known when they got down to the basement, they saw the body, then they should have noticed the window. And John would have been like, yeah, I broke it. I broke it earlier, months ago. Is that how he did it? Or was he just like, oh no, I broke it, because I needed to get in. I locked myself out. The fact that it comes up, like, it seems like it comes later. A single unidentified footprint was detected near where John Benet's body was found, but no footprints were found in the snow outside the window. Yeah, this is another case of evidence that just makes me scratch my head. First of all, it says a single unidentified footprint was detected near where her body was found. That's not true. There was actually 2 sets of footprints. I actually saw that in a documentary a little while ago when I was trying to catch myself up on this case. There was 2 sets of unidentified footprints. Also, there were no footprints found out in the snow outside the window. You also know what else wasn't found? Footprints that led to the doorway of the house. There were not any footprints that came in or out, which means one of 2 things. One, the killer was already in the house. And 2, the killer lived in the house. It was one of the family members. The ransom note was the most intriguing piece of evidence in the case. It has been written using a pen and notepad that came from the kitchen. When in the fuck, in the history of the world, have you ever heard of a ransom note being written in the very place where you plan on doing your business? Have you ever heard that? Also, not to go all 40s on you, but you know how like they used to do in the old days when like you had like the ransom notes and it was like newspaper? That was very precise. It was intricate. It was likely done days before the planned incident. This was a ransom note written in the house. When in the history of the world have you ever heard of a ransom note being written in the very spot where someone is about to commit a crime? Never. You've never heard it because it's never happened prior to this case. It had been, yeah. A rough draft of the note was discovered in the middle of the pad that was addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Do you think that if a criminal was going to kidnap a little girl, that he gives a crap about making a mistake in the ransom note? It's ridiculous enough that the ransom note is being written in the house where the crime's about to be committed. But he makes an error on Mr. and Mrs. Better scratch that out. I just mean Mr. You know what? I think it was the wife. And I think that she made an error by not including herself in the fucking note. If it was addressed to Mrs., you would have taken the freaking speculation off yourself just a little bit. Abnormally long for a ransom demand, the note raised a number of questions. Oh, did it ever? It evidently came from the killer, but did it point toward a member of the Ramsay family or an intruder? Was it genuine or a hoax? Oh, it was a hoax. The letter incorporated references that only the Ramsays would be likely to know. For example, the amount of $118,000 was the same as John Ramsay's recent bonus. The only three people that would possibly know about the bonus would be John Ramsay, his boss that gave him the bonus, and Patsy, because John came home and said, "Hey, honey, I got a bonus for $118,000. Oh, wow, John, that's great. How is this an unsolved murder? Seriously. I told you I'd go off the rails. How the fuck is this an unsolved murder? This and OJ is just insane. Like, it's not unsolved. We know who did it. Moreover, the demand of $118,000 was a very small amount for a kidnapper to demand, especially considering the Ramsays' wealth. Right? Watch any movie. Watch any TV show. Look up any freaking ransom that's happened in real life. The ransom demand is high as hell. This is the very specific amount. This is the very bonus. Come on. When Exxon executive Sidney J. Resso was abducted in 1992, for example, the ransom demand was $15.5 million. You know what this sounds like? This sounds like an amateur. This sounds like someone who had to write a note because they had to get suspicion off of themselves. And because they weren't familiar with how ransoms really go, because they're so high up in the clouds of their wealthy life, that the first thing they thought of was writing down the very amount that their husband got in his bonus. Patsy Ramsay killed Jean Benet. You'll never convince me otherwise. You will never convince me otherwise. The letter was signed with the acronym SBTC, and some detectives theorized that this could have been a reference to the Subsic Bay, where John Ramsay had spent some time during his naval career. Mark McClish, a retired deputy United States Marshal and author of the 2001 book I Know You Are Lying, Detecting Deception Through Statement Analysis, theorized that the initials stood for Saved by the Cross. According to Reverend Steve Sauer, an assistant professor of theological studies, blah, 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 Saved by the Cross is a statement of faith that has its roots in a number of Christian religions. In the note, the writer threatens to behead Jean Benet. This was an especially... Oh, hold on. Before I get to that, Saved by the Cross. So not only are they not only are they a wealthy family, but they're probably a known family. They probably attend church every Sunday. Are they religious? Because if so, Patsy Ramsay probably thought of, oh, Saved by the Cross. She probably thinks in her eyes, it's okay that I murdered my daughter because I'm going to be saved by the cross. Has anyone ever, 25 plus years, has anyone ever thought of that? Did that come up? In the note, the writer threatens to behead Jean Benet. This is an exceptionally violent and uncommon threat, which many experts believe pointed toward a man being involved. However, a number of experts also claim that the note has a number of feminine touches, such as, "I'd advise you to be rested." Experts found at least 5 other examples of what they referred to as maternalistic language. So the beheading, that's not normal for any ransom note. But in Patsy Ramsay's mind, she's going to try to make it seem like it's an organization. She's going to try to make it seem like they're terrorists that are familiar with her husband's work and what he does for a living. So that's why that's there. Also, feminine touches. The writer or writers purports to be from a foreign faction, yet they use American quotes in prose style and distinctively American. The author of the note misspells the words such as business and possession, yet can use and spell correctly more complex words such as countermeasures, deviation, and attach. Right? Patsy Ramsay. The writer also mimics quotes from the American this one is just the writer also mimics quotes from American movies. The repeated threats of "the girl dies" echoes the 1971 thriller Dirty Harry, while "don't try to grow a brain" is not only American slang, but also a quote from the 1994 thriller Speed. Another strange aspect of the note was the change from "we" to "I", as well as from Mr. Ramsay to John. Right? If you're gonna be like this, this is the most unprofessional ransom note I've ever heard. Is there such thing as a professional ransom note? No, but like I feel like there's such thing as an unprofessional ransom note, and this is it, which could imply that more than one person was involved in composing the note, or it was written by Patsy Ramsay, his wife, in haste and in very small time, and she had to think stuff up, and she kept contradicting herself. Whoever wrote the ransom demand must have had detailed knowledge of the family's life. Moreover, they must have been able to move easily around the large house in the dark and also find the tucked away wine cellar in the basement. Does that make any fucking sense? Who would know their way around the house in the dark? The people that live there. Huh? Also, what isn't mentioned, I don't want to let this escape me. Do you know what's not mentioned? The fact that they found the ransom note, then they found the body, and she was in the house. Did that ever come up? Did anybody ever think, in law enforcement or the Ramsays themselves, be like, why was our daughter's body still in the house found dead down in the basement when there was a ransom note saying that people had her? That would imply what? That the ransom note was a hoax. The ransom note was created as a device to try to get the suspicion off of the Ramsays themselves. But there's no forcible entry in or out, which means it was somebody in the freaking house. The amount of evidence is just, it's as bad as OJ. It's all right there. But yet, for some reason, it's still considered an unsolved mystery to this day. We're still looking the other way. Handwriting experts from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation decided that John Ramsay did not write the note, but their analysis regarding Patsy was inconclusive. During the lengthy investigation, 73 suspects' handwriting would be analyzed to discover who could have written it. Convinced that the police were regarding them as the prime suspects in the murder of their daughter, Both John and Patsy hired separate lawyers and refused to speak to the police. They felt that they had told everything they knew and could not provide any more insights into the case. Are you fucking kidding me? First off, Patsy's handwriting was they tested her, it was inconclusive. I'm not a forensic person, but how freaking hard is it to analyze someone's handwriting? How easy is it to forge handwriting? She could have knowledge on both. She could either know how to write to make it look like it wasn't, or regardless. How hard is it to analyze handwriting? It was inconclusive. Do you know what that says to me? She freaking did it. It was done. There was feminine touches in the letter. I could just keep piling it up, don't you see? Oh my god. And they hired separate lawyers. They're a rich, wealthy family. Surely they have their own freaking lawyer, right? Family lawyer. But if you murder your daughter, then you're probably going to need to hire two different lawyers. And they didn't want to talk to the police. Oh, that's all we have to say. Really? How do you explain that the uneaten bowl of pineapple on the table? How do you explain for the fact that there's a ransom note that explains exactly $18,000, which is the exact amount that your husband got back in his bonus? Why did we find your daughter's body down in the basement? Whoever killed your daughter knew their way around the house and knew to go through the dark basement down there. Unbelievable. In March 1997, John Ramsay's two adult children, John Andrew and Melinda, were cleared as suspects. I like how they're accused. There's others. How are there other suspects? This was like 2 years after OJ. Do you know who the only person that was tried of possibly killing Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman was? OJ. There was never any other person because people were convinced that because OJ looked ridiculously guilty, that there was no reason to ever look or try anybody else. Aaron Hernandez killed people. Nobody was ever convinced there was anybody else other than him. And yet with the Ramsays, despite there being no footprints into the house, they still looked into other suspects. There were 3 other fucking people in that house. The only explanation is that if there was another person in there, that person was hiding, either up in the attic or an underground bunker out in the backyard. I don't fucking know. But how are there so many freaking suspects? How? If so, they were hiding. And if not, it was the mother. And I think the father knew about it. Maybe he was just in denial. Maybe he was like, maybe they talked about it. And on one end, he was like, yeah, just go ahead and do it. But on the other end, he was just kind of like, no, that's my daughter. I can't. I can't lose another child. That's what makes me think that John Ramsay doesn't know about it. He already lost one daughter, so why the fuck would he want to lose a second? So I don't really know that John, for as long as I've known about this case, I don't think John Ramsay knows about it. I think he's upset that he loses his daughter, a second daughter, mind you. And as much as he loves his wife and as much as he loves his dead daughter, he's probably going to back his wife, isn't he? Oh, man, I told you this case is just so fucking ridiculous. Sorry for all the swears, but yeah, I told you I was going to go off the rails. On April 30th, 1997, the Ramsays finally agreed to separate formal interviews. They only agreed on the condition that they receive the police reports so that they could prepare for the questions. Totally not suspicious. Can we see the questions so we know what you're going to ask us so we can prepare a counter instead of the truth that we should be giving you? To the police, their reluctance to cooperate seemed to conflict with their earlier statements that they would do whatever was necessary to aid the investigation. Throughout her short life, Jean Benet had a frequent tendency to wet the bed. For some, This casts further suspicion on John and Patsy, as bedwetting is often a response in children to abuse. The underwear that John Benet was wearing was found with stained. So yeah, okay, hold on. It was stained, and pull-up diapers were hanging out of the closet outside of Jean Benet's bedroom. A theory circulated that Patsy accidentally killed Jean Benet in a fit of rage following a bedwetting incident, causing Patsy to scoff. Does someone actually think I would kill my child because she wet the bed? No, but you'd kill her because you wanted to be her. You wanted her to be just like you. You wanted her to be a Little Miss Pageant contestant. And maybe, despite being so young, she had aspiring inspirations to be something else. In her being an over deviant mother, in the whole bedwetting thing, she probably abused her for speaking out of turn. Not totally crazy. Over the ensuing years, John and Patsy Ramsay remained under a cloud of suspicion. In 1999, the Boulder grand jury voted to indict both parents on 2 counts of each child abuse, resulting in the death of Jean Benet. However, the Ramsays were never indicted because the district attorney, Alex Hunter, refused to sign the documents. Why the fuck would you refuse to sign it? Why? The evidence is all there. What possible reason do you have to not sign that? Being paid off? Being in denial? His head's in the clouds. A grand jury investigated the case between 1998 and 1999. A witness who appeared before it, Linda Hoffman Pugh, was the Ramsay's housekeeper at the time of Jean Benet's murder. Hoffman Pugh voiced suspicions that Patsy Ramsay was guilty of her daughter's murder, stating that she argued with her often. I think she had multiple personalities. She'd be in a good mood, and then she'd be cranky, she relayed in her statement. Hoffman Pugh maintained that the blanket Jean Benet's body had been wrapped in had most likely come from a clothes dryer near Jean Benet's bedroom. So you ever notice how, like, whenever they interview like a maid or a housekeeper, the first thing that person does is they throw their employer under the bus? You ever notice that? There's another case like that, the Hinterkaifeck one. The maid was like, "Oh yeah, like." Actually, no, not the Hinterkaifeck one. There's another one. There's another case I did, and the first thing that the maid did was like, yeah, he was never right. I always suspected him. I never liked the way he presented himself. Like, Jesus, way to, like, throw your employer under the bus. Further evidence disclosed during the grand jury included 4 fibers that were found on the adhesive side of the sticky tape that had been placed over Jean Benet's mouth. These fibers were determined to be microscopically and chemically consistent with the sweater that Patsy wore on the night of the murder. However, the tape had been removed in the house and then dropped on the floor, which could explain for the presence of the fibers. Cut it though, or are you just grasping at straws? It's right there. It's right there. She freaking murdered her child. And they're like, oh, maybe it dropped on the floor. No, it fucking didn't. Shut your mouth. Following questioning by the grand jury, the authorities confirmed that Burke Ramsay, you haven't heard about Burke at all, that's the 9-year-old brother, who was just 9 years old at the time of the murder, was not a suspect. I kind of theorized that if the mother didn't, my second suspect would be Burke. Sure, he wouldn't really know what the hell he was doing. Hence the reason that Patsy and John Ramsay both got separate lawyers, both refused to speak to cooperate in the investigation, which is why a ransom note would have been written. I like how they just immediately wrote the kid off. Like, nah, he's 9, he couldn't have done it. Really? His sister she was a freaking pageant queen. She probably got way more attention than he did. There's motive there. I still think it was the mother, but the second person I would think would be the son. However, Jean Benet's brother later became a favorite culprit among many internet sleuths over the years. His seemingly lighthearted, casual attitude during a taped interview with a child specialist on January 8, 1997, just 2 weeks after the death of his younger sister, caught the attention of several people. Former friends and neighbors of the Ramsays stated that Burke had a temper and was jealous of the attention his sister had received. Literally just said that, leading to a report that Burke had been violent with John Benet in the past. See? According to a family photographer, he had hit her on the head with a golf club a year earlier. In December 2016, Burke's lawyers filed a defamation lawsuit totaling $750 million against the CBS Corporation for speculating that he was the killer in their TV documentary, The Case of Jean Benet. Burke said that the murder was some pedophile in the pageant audience. So, what is this? The ironic part about this, which I imagine goes unnoticed, Burke's lawyers filed a defamation lawsuit totaling $750 million. That's funny, Burke, because your mother only wanted $118,000, your dad's bonus. In 2008, Boulder County DA Mary Lacey exonerated the entire Ramsay family on the basis that their DNA did not match unidentified male DNA found on the 2 items of John Benet's clothing. See, I can't explain this part because, again, I think the mother did it. In a crazy theory that no one probably has put out there on the table in 25 years, somebody else was in the house and they hid in the fucking attic or out in the backyard. Well, actually, no, they couldn't have hidden in the backyard because there would have been footprints there, wouldn't there? But somebody hid in the... She got help. Either that or there's DNA evidence from somebody that she interacted with earlier in the day. Because she went to that party. So maybe there was a friendly family friend. And it was like, oh, aren't you so cute? Oh, good job. We like what you're doing at the pageant. That would explain it. Would it not? Remember Patsy said, we all went right to bed after. Look at that. This ruling came too late for Mrs. Ramsay, who had died of ovarian cancer in 2006, aged just 49. However, it has transpired that the parietal DNA profile was contained a mixture of DNA belonging to Jean Benet, an unknown male, and in one sample, a third identified person. I can't really explain that part, but again, it wouldn't be out of the realm of possibility to think, I was like, oh, good job. You're so cute. We love what you're doing. I think it could be that. It's ridiculous or as innocent as that might seem. Aside from the family members, several people were suspects in the case. Housekeeper Linda Hoffman Pugh and her handyman husband Mervyn came under suspicion when Patsy told the investigators that Hoffman Pugh had money problems and had once asked the Ramsays for a loan. It is possible that Linda knew how much John Ramsay had been awarded as a Christmas bonus. Moreover, Linda had a key to the house and was familiar with its layouts. It is speculated that if Jean Benet had been killed by an intruder or intruders, they could have had a key, since there was no obvious sign of forced entry. However, Linda and Mervyn were never accused of any crime. That's funny. The 2 parents, the people who pretty much brought John Benet into this world, were accused of murder. And the only 2 people who had access to their house, other than them, were never accused. Huh. How you like that? At the time of Jean Benet's murder, Gary Oliva, a drifter with a history of sexually abusing minors, lived just a few blocks away from the Ramsay house. This part's really strange. I'm not really sure what to make of this. When he was picked up on an unrelated charge 4 years later, police found a photograph of Jean Benet and a stun gun in his backpack. A search of his apartment revealed an eerie shrine to Jean Benet. Olivia claimed he never lusted over this shrine, but instead would look at the pictures and cry. Police took Oliva to the station to the station to question him about the murder. He was grilled for hours, asked to provide DNA and writing samples, then released without charge. Someone who was convinced of Oliva's guilt was his own high school friend, Michael Vale, who claimed that just after Jean Benet's murder, Oliva called him in a panic and said that he had hurt a little girl before hanging up. In 2018, it was reported that Oliva sent a letter to Vale confessing to the murder of Jean Benet by accident. Oliva is currently serving a 10-year sentence for 2 counts of attempted sexual exploitation and 1 sexual count of exploitation. So, it's one of those things like, if you didn't do it, why would you say you did? He lived down the street from them. Again, there's no evidence to show that somebody was in or out of the house. But, hear me out. What if Patsy Ramsay hired Gary Oliva to kill Jean Benet, then told him to hide up in the attic? I don't even know if they had a freaking attic, but they have a wealthy house. Hide somewhere. They call the police. Everybody comes trampling through, blah, blah, blah. Everybody leaves. And after everyone's left, right, they bring them down to the station, whatever. Oliva escapes somehow, whether it's through the back door, through a window. People have walked. There's tons of footprints by that point. So Oliva escaping at some point, whether the police are there or after everyone's left, isn't out of the realm of possibility. I still think Patsy Ramsay did. If she didn't do it herself, she hired somebody to do it and hid them somewhere in the house. Because the whole Gary Oliva thing, like he lived like a couple, like maybe it just seems a coincidence that you had a predator that lived around there. So of course you would accuse him, you know? An early suspect was Bill McReynolds. Oh, Bill McReynolds. Wait till you get a hold of this one. An early suspect was Bill McReynolds, who played Santa Claus at private parties for the Ramsays and confessed to being particularly fond of Jean Benet. Oh, it gets creepier. McReynolds and his wife Janet had been at the Ramsay house just 2 nights before Jean Benet was murdered. The type of company that these people keep is just... Like, did the Ramsays think... If the Ramsays were even remotely smart, they would have thrown this man under the fucking bus. Because the shit that this man is accused of is creepy. They should just arrest him for being a creep. The police were said to have discovered some eerie parallels between McReynolds' lives and the details in the murder case. On December 26, 1974, mind you, same date, on December 26, 1974, the McReynolds' 9-year-old daughter and another girl were abducted by an unknown assailant who molested the second girl. Within hours, both girls were set free. Additionally, police found out that Janet had written a play in 1977 that was about the torture and murder of a 16-year-old Sylvia Likens, who was found dead in a basement, much like Jean Benet. Don't you get it? If Bill McReynolds didn't do it, which I don't think he did, this came up. It's all one big giant plot. Patsy Ramsay knew about this because Bill McReynolds came to the house often, played Santa. They talked. That probably gave her the idea to kill Jean Benet in a similar fashion to how Bill McReynolds... about Janet's play. McReynolds staunchly denied any involvement, and investigators ruled him out. The one thing that they did not mention in this, that I saw earlier in the documentary, Bill McReynolds, to make this even creepier, he was given a gift of a little veil of glitter that came off of one of Jean Benet's dresses, and he's like, I love this gift more than any gift I've ever been given. My video ended on Instagram. I don't know why, but yeah. So hold on a second. I have to. It just randomly. I love how it just randomly ended my video. Okay, sorry about that. The video just randomly ended. So about Bill McReynolds, he was given a gift from Jean Benet of like glitter, I guess off one of her sequins or whatever, and he said, "I will cherish this more than any gift I've ever been given." To further his creepiness, right? Because no child had ever given him because remember he played Santa, so he's like, "Oh, I love this gift more than anything." When he told his wife that when he was to die, he wanted the glitter that Jean Benet had given him to be mixed in with his fucking ashes. How creepy is that? He didn't do it though, but like even if he did or he didn't, that's fucking creepy. Like holy crap, is that creepy? That was in the documentary I watched earlier. An electrician named Michael Helgoth worked close to the Ramsay home and had a history of violence and sexual abuse. The company that these people kept. In November 1996, Helgoth, Jesus, supposedly told a colleague that he and a friend would soon make a large sum of money, $50,000 to $80,000 each. On February 13, 1987, DA Alex Hunter announced in a press conference that they were narrowing down the list of suspects until only one would remain. Alex Hunter, the same guy that was like, the same guy that said, what was it? That refused to sign the documents about child abuse? Yeah. 2 days later, Helgoth was found dead. Hold on. Yeah, 2 days later, Helgoth was found dead by apparent suicide. Interesting. In 2000, oh yeah. Then it's just going to talk about John Mark Carr, which we already know about. We don't need to get into that. The tragic case of the Jean Benet Ramsay divided the nation, with the police and the public either believing that an intruder broke into the Ramsay home and killed Jean Benet. I don't think that. Who thinks that? There's no fucking footprints. Somebody in the house did it. Or that she was murdered by a family member. Yes, she was. It was her mother. Thanks to the combination of contaminated crime scene, a bungled initial police investigation, and a diametrically opposed opinions of numerous experts, a definitive solution to the murder of Jean Benet seems as elusive as ever. It really doesn't, though. Just sit the fuck down and look at all the evidence. Just look at it all. It's there. It's fucking there. God, this case infuriates me. You know what's even weirder about it? If you, like, bear with me here. I'm almost done with this. It's open out. It's over. It's a bit over. Oh, God. It's already been over an hour. I told you I was going to go off the rails with this. It just infuriates me that they're like, it's unsolved. No, because the 90s meant one thing. The 90s meant that two of the biggest cases ever seem so obvious that, like, no, it's not obvious. We don't know who did it. We don't know who killed Nicole Brown and Ron Goldman. It wasn't OJ. Oh, we don't know who killed Jean Benet. It was her mother. But think about this. This will be my last thought for you before I sign off. Bear with me and just agree with me that it was Patsy Ramsay. If you agree with that assumption, think about this. That would then mean that Gary Oliva, who lived down the street, Bill McReynolds, who frequently played Santa at Ramsay's parties, and an electrician who worked in the Ramsay's house, all had been accused of sexual incident cases, whether it was exploitation, pornography, murder, whatever it might be. They all had a case of sexual abuse, sexual incidents. And yet, the one thing that doesn't really come up in the JonBenet case is that she was sexually abused. There's no indication of that. Of course, they immediately think of it, but that was never brought up. And yet, these three creepy men are all associated with the family. And they're like, oh, they have to be accused of they have to be suspects. Like John Mark Carr, I never talked about him. There was no reason to mention him. He was in Georgia. He actually, in 2006, John Mark Carr had this like insanely weird obsession with JonBenet, admitted to killing her. They brought him in, and the police were like, no, dude, you were in Georgia. The murder happened in Colorado. So that's weird in itself. But these three people, coincidentally enough, all have sexual history, criminal sexual history. But none of them could have gotten into the house unless they were already in the house. But I don't think that's the case. I really don't. I really don't. I think it was Patsy Ramsay. And after an hour and 8 minutes, I'm done. I hope you enjoyed this excruciatingly long, thought-provoking, detailed mystery unsolved, the JonBenet Ramsay case. Hopefully there's not another one that will make me just go off the rails. Do stay tuned for more fun, less tragic case. I said fun, but it's not fun at all. Mystery unsolved case. Let me reword that. Do stay tuned for next week's episode, which is a lot less deviant than this, when I will be talking about the great Russian monk Rasputin. For Mystery Unsolved, until next time.